Hello and welcome to the Green Voice podcast, where you get all the dirt on sustainability here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Grant Ervin with S&B USA, coming to you from the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University. Super excited to have a great conversation today. The topic is water, wastewater specifically, and just a little kind of intro, I guess, to the conversation. I recently just came from a big project that we have at S&B in Fargo, North Dakota, which is a major water project with the Army Corps of Engineers, where we're basically creating a flood diversion channel around the city of Fargo, North Dakota, and Moorhead, Minnesota. And I got there and I was like, this is the wet weather program. And so I was super excited to come here and have this conversation with two of the leaders of Pittsburgh's wet weather program, Julia Spicher and Tim Prevost with ALCOSAN, the Allegheny County Sanitary Authority. Julia, Tim, thanks for joining us here on the Green Voice podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Grant.
It's, as I just said there in the beginning, last week I was traveling in North Dakota, which is kind of the opposite of Pittsburgh. It's totally flat. There's no hills, but they have major water issues also. And many of us in the region have worked in and around kind of the wet weather issues here in Pittsburgh. You guys do it very intimately, and I was thinking about this conversation coming up and just how excited I was to kind of get an update and share with our audience some of these different things, because the topic of water is not just a local or national, but it's a global conversation right now because of the issues with our changing climate and precipitation patterns. And so just wanted to say I'm excited to talk to you guys. That's all. But as we get into this conversation, maybe Julia, want to start with you and then move on to Tim a little bit. Give me a little bit of background about yourself and kind of your journey to ALCOSAN, and then a little bit about your role as the regional manager of regionalization.
Sure. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh. My dad worked for U.S. Steel. My pap worked for PPG. So
your pap.
My pap.
I have paps too. That's a Pittsburgh thing.
It is.
We love it.
It is.
We love our paps.
The family roots are deep in industry in Pittsburgh. I went to school for civil engineering at Penn State.
Okay.
So I graduated in 2006 and immediately started working in Philadelphia. That's where I found the right job at the right time. So I worked for a consulting firm there and got a lot of experience working on the Philadelphia water departments and New York City DEP's their green programs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was. And it was exciting because it was new. They were the first people to try to implement it on a big scale. So that's really where I cut my teeth as a young engineer. And then my passion has always been water, the environment and water. So it was a good fit. But when I had the opportunity to come back home and work on these rivers in my hometown, you can't pass that up.
That's awesome. I'm going to dive into that in a second. Tim, a little bit about you, kind of your background and kind of your journey to ALCOSAN.
My journey to ALCOSAN was kind of weird. After college, I went with my band to Philadelphia.
Oh, hold on. There's a lot of story there.
Yeah, we don't have nearly enough time to talk about that.
Okay.
But while I was in Philadelphia, being in a band, you don't make a ton of money. You got to make money. I had a civil engineering background. So I found a job with Philadelphia Water Department working on their CSO program.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So from there...
So both your rivers literally run through Philadelphia from a professional standpoint.
Yep.
Okay.
And then one of the folks that I was subcontracting with said, hey, there's a position in Pittsburgh if you want it.
Okay.
And so the band just broke up. I didn't want to live in Philadelphia anymore. So I was like, yeah, I'll give this a shot. And that was in 1996.
Okay.
And so I showed up in Pittsburgh. Day one, worked down at ALCOSAN. And then a year and a half later, they offered me a job, and I've been with ALCOSAN ever since.
That's awesome. I have this like behind the VH1 behind the music kind of, series in my head right now. I was like, we're traveling on 76, and next thing you know, I needed to get a job. What I have to ask, what type of band are you singing? Instrument?
It was lead singer.
Lead singer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need to hear a little sample?
Well,
Maybe next time.
Next time.
We don't want any copyright.
It was
Sure.
There was a, let's put it this way, there was a very good reason we didn't make a lot of money.
Okay.
Okay. We tried. It was fun, but
what genre, if I may ask?
I guess the guys called it punk jazz.
Punk jazz.
Yeah, I put it together junk,
All right. Playing like local clubs or college parties or
not so much the college parties, but clubs.
Okay.
A lot of clubs, JC Dobbs, Khyber Pass, Trocadero, those types of places.
So this is like the live music scene of Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, and they still got live music going on there. I'm taking my daughter a week from Saturday, her and a bunch of friends to Philadelphia, and they're going to see The Nothing.
The Nothing.
Yeah. Shoegaze band. Sounds wonderful. And I'm like, do I get a ticket? And they're like, no.
Oh.
I'm like, come on.
Driver only.
You're literally just driving the van now.
I'm just driving them to Philadelphia.
That's awesome. Well, maybe we don't want to go down that road too far, but I do want to know more in the past. So we'll wait till after this show.
Sure.
See if we can get like some bootlegs or something.
There's got to be a T-shirt somewhere.
T-shirts,
yes.
Definitely. Talk to me a little bit, I think, just for the audience. I don't want to take it for granted, about ALCOSAN.
Mm-hmm.
What is ALCOSAN? Maybe what were some of the origins? Why do we have a regional sewer authority? I'll maybe start with Tim and then on to Julia.
Yeah, ALCOSAN. You have to think back in the industrial heyday of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have wastewater treatment. So all the sewers just directed straight to the rivers,
Mm-hmm.
and it just dumped into the rivers 24/7. And the rivers were essentially cesspools.
Yeah.
After World War II.
So that's all the way up into like the 1940s or so.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's just crazy to think about that.
It is.
Pennsylvania passed a clean streams law kind of mandating that, hey, you need wastewater treatment. Mm-hmm. Everybody else in the country had wastewater treatment at that time. Why not Pittsburgh? So Pittsburgh started going through the motions of getting organized. The guy who founded essentially ALCOSAN, John LeBoon,
Mm-hmm.
he was in the Corps of Engineers.
Mm.
He pretty much corralled everybody, all these municipalities, pulling together agreements. Sounding familiar, Julia?
Yes.
And then it took a while, but in the 50s, they finally got the contracts together. They got the contractors out there. They built the plant. They built 30 miles of tunnels and I don't know, maybe about 30, 40 miles of other types of sewers out further in the system. And so in 1959, ALCOSAN went online. So 59 to now.
What was that period? About a 20-year period from organizing to...
I think organizing really started right after World War II. All the soldiers coming home, there was work to be done, a lot of engineers looking for work. And it was the prime time to make that, to get that ball going. But 46 until when work actually began in 56, 10 years of coordinating,
right?
Working the politics, getting all the municipalities that are going to become part of this group, become part of our customers. ALCOSAN only has customer municipalities. We don't bill individuals. The municipalities bill them.
Are your customers, right?
Our customers
And that's 83 municipalities?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
It serves about 800,000 people, but we have the 83 customers.
83 customers. Which is, it's good to know you know your customers, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
What is, and so LeBoon, that's a name that I never heard actually in the history. So he was with the Army Corps of Engineers?
I believe, yeah. I think he was like a colonel or something.
Okay. And so that it goes back to kind of my Fargo situation. I think it's like the Corps and their role in this. Like, talk to me about kind of their role in thinking about the process in terms of water quality, water quantity, and this return from World War II. I think is an important piece of the story too.
Yeah, so during our creation, I think they were a role, but they certainly were. This was municipalities. This was Pittsburghers coming together and said, instead of building our 83 plants, let's be efficient about this. So let's focus on building those deep tunnel interceptors and directing it all to one place and treating
So
it
the
there
Corps
the
is
best.
providing like this vision. You guys need to do this, but
Exactly.
it's the local governments that take the leadership role.
Absolutely. And now the Corps is still a very good partner of ours. We have a couple of projects going with them right now. Remember when Tim was saying the people just used to dump the waste into their streams.
Yeah.
And they actually would build the sewers around some of those streams. And we are working with them to remove one of the streams. Yeah, to bring them. Well, if we can't daylight them, get them out of coming to the treatment plant. That's not where they need to be. And give us the capacity that we need for sanitary flow instead of treating that stream-based flow.
So take me a little bit to that history. So the plant gets built. We're in the 1960s or so. These municipalities have come together and created this regional agreement, and things are working pretty well, right? And so by and large, rivers are no longer cesspools to a great extent, or to what they were.
They were greatly improved water quality.
Greatly improved water quality.
Absolutely.
There's probably technical legal terms in there that I'll screw up, so I'll leave that to you guys. So that water quality is improving, but then fast forward into what the 1980s, 1990s, the Clean Water Act comes into play. Maybe pick the story up there.
The CSO policy, like Clean Water Act, came out in the early 70s. And what that did for ALCOSAN was only primary treatment.
Okay.
And that means that the sewage comes in, you get rid of the stuff that floats, the stuff that sinks. It goes past that treatment, and then you dose it with some chemical, chlorine, hypochlorite, something that kills viruses, goes out to the river. But secondary treatment you go through the first part. The second part, it's biological treatment, where microorganisms go in and they feed off of the particulates that are remaining, and then it goes to the next part. Clarifiers, then it's clean. And so the water going out of ALCOSAN now is technically cleaner than the river itself.
In that discharge area of Ohio. Yep.
And so that was the Clean Water Act, and then the CSO policy, which was the really big push that got me here, Julia here, CSOs and ALCOSAN.
Combined sewer overflows.
Right.
Combined sewer overflows. There are a lot of them in Pittsburgh. Probably the only other place that has more of them might be New York City.
Yeah.
And New York City's huge. So pound for pound, we had a pretty big CSO issue. And that's what we've been addressing for a long time.
And so when does that kind of come to a head, I guess, in terms of being the catalyst for what we now know as the wet weather program?
Trying to figure out how to reduce or eliminate the overflows.
Okay.
Wet weather, there just wasn't capacity. The treatment plant had so much, could take a little bit of the wet weather, but once it hits their limit, everything else was going out to the river.
And maybe for a quick second, too, one of you could define the combined sewer overflow. Like, what is that?
There's two types of overflows. And combined sewers are where there's one larger diameter pipe where both of the sanitary flow, the daily flow that comes in, connects with wet weather. So when you see a catch basin out in the street, you see those drains that all the flow is going into, that connects then to the same pipe as where your toilets or your drains or everything else would go. So that's a combined sewer where we have this mixed, they're in the same pipe. And during heavy wet weather events, there's no capacity. There's inadequate capacity to get that to the plant for treatment. So some of that flow, the mix of the storm water and the sanitary flow, that mix would relieve itself to the river instead of backing up into people's houses or being on the roadways or where people can come in contact with them. A separate sewer is where there's two different pipes.
Mm-hmm.
One handles all the stormwater, the other one handles all the sanitary flow.
Mm-hmm.
So those, by design, now the standard is that those do not overflow, that the only overflow you would get is from the storm line.
Okay, so they don't meet then.
They don't meet.
And then the idea then is basically to keep out all of those contaminants from the rivers, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think 2008 was a milestone year. So that was under the CSO policy. We had to come up with a long-term control plan that says how are you going to eliminate all SSOs and how are you going to reduce combined sewer overflow volume. So ALCOSAN entered into a consent decree with the EPA, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and the Allegheny County Health Department. And we negotiated the terms of that consent decree. We finally ended up where we are now with our 2020 modified consent decree that was entered into. So some of the comments we got back after that first one when we put together that wet weather plan was incorporate more green, throw in some adaptive management, which allows us to take a pause as we implement these huge infrastructure investments, see if they're working, see if we need to stick with the plan we have or if we need to make some modifications. And then ALCOSAN asked for more time because we love our rivers, we're very connected to them, but there is an affordability element for the region. And so we couldn't meet the timeline and stay within affordable rates.
In terms of raising rates or raising revenue in order to cover costs.
Correct.
Right. ALCOSAN raises revenue, and the rates have gone up predictably over the years. But if you imagine if we were pushed to hit a schedule with the full plan, it would have been a much larger impact on ratepayers.
That's interesting. And so affordability for the ratepayers, you only have so many people, only so many ratepayers, so you can only cover that cost over so many households effectively, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And ALCOSAN's rates are the same for all of our customer municipalities. Customer municipalities, they can adjust their rates based upon their sewer needs.
Yeah.
But with our 83 communities, we have a wide range of economics.
It's interesting. I want to get into both of your programs, but before we do, could you give me and the listener kind of the overview of what the program is? Like what's ALCOSAN doing to address, kind of this consent decree, which is effectively an agreement with these parties that you mentioned, the federal government, the health department, the Department of Environmental Protection. So what is our, quote unquote, our response as ALCOSAN, or is the region really?
Yeah, it's the region's clean water plan.
Because we're all in this.
Right, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
We're all contributors.
Yes.
in one way or another.
And that's one of the great things about working at ALCOSAN is you really do impact everyone on a daily basis. It's huge. But we have...
I had a lot of jokes, but I will spare everyone.
We've heard them.
I know.
Right.
It's like, burr, 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 like I don't even want to try with you guys. So, but they write themselves, but the material... But yeah, give us the picture of what the response is.
So the Clean Water Plan is the response, and that has 4 key pillars. The first is expanding our wastewater treatment plant capacity. So it was previously 250 million gallons per day at peak wet weather treatment. And by the end of this, we will go up to 600 million gallons per day with at least primary treatment.
Right.
So that plan is those efforts are very much in construction. That team is doing an amazing job. It is on a compliance deadline, so they're meeting all those milestones and pushing that forward.
And that plant expansion is in large part because the region has grown, as well as the water.
It's the wet weather component. When earlier I said that we have a set capacity for dry weather.
Yeah.
And then there's a little bit remaining for wet weather. And right now we're at 250 million gallons. And we probably have, if it goes back and forth, maybe 50 million gallons of capacity for wet weather. Now we're going to go from 250, and when we're done with the plant, it'll go up to 600. And so that is for wet weather. So being able to pull all that water into the system to be treated, not go into the rivers untreated.
Yeah.
And
So is that a result of like the increase in wet weather volume? Like there's more weather events, or more water running into the system?
You can think of it as you're offsetting. So right now at the 250 MGD, we have overflows. We have those combined sewer overflows that Tim was mentioning. We need to pick those up so that we can move that volume instead of into the rivers to the plant for treatment.
Got it.
So that means you need a bigger treatment plant because you're going to treat more water. And then, so once you have this expanded plant, the second pillar is increased conveyance. So we're building large diameter, very deep tunnels that will get that flow to the plant.
Because what we have right now just would not be able to bring that flow, that 600 to the plant.
Okay. And so these are longer tunnels, bigger tunnels?
Yeah, we have an existing deep tunnel system. This one's going to be larger diameter than what we have now, and it's going to be a little bit deeper. So there'll be 3 legs of it. The Ohio River Tunnel is the first one that's moving, then the Allegheny River Tunnel, and the Monongahela River Tunnel.
Easy to keep track of for Pittsburghers.
Engineers are extremely creative.
Yeah, right.
And that's ORT, ART, and MRT. Yeah, so we didn't get like, line X or the blue line or Y line. That's smart. Keep it simple.
Yeah, so that's the second pillar. The third is the GROW program that Tim oversees, and that's about working with our customer municipalities to keep as much stormwater and rainwater out of the system as possible. And I'm sure he'll talk about the different ways that we do that. And the fourth is regionalization, which is the program I work on, where we're trying to take the sewers that are large diameter, they serve multiple municipalities that are connected to them, and transfer them from many municipalities owning it to us. And it removes the financial burden, the operation and maintenance burden from the municipalities to their authority that they helped create to manage those sewers.
Take it from there too, Julia. Like I back in a former life, I worked for the city of Pittsburgh and did a lot of that kind of cooperation work in the consent decree. So putting my old hat back on, I was always amazed at the attention and detail and the knowledge of local government officials on these issues, and also their passion in terms of the topic, and both the work that they did to create this cooperation. You're living that right now. I mean, talk to me about kind of the role of local government in this, because like we said in the beginning, like this is the genesis of ALCOSAN was at local government. Talk to me about that regionalization and why that's so important.
That's the majority of the program, really, is just working with the municipalities. Everyone has the same metric. Everyone receives the same terms as part of the transfer agreement, but every municipality is different. So our customers have been absolutely amazing.
And talk to me about transfer too. What does that mean?
Sure. So the sewers are owned outside of what ALCOSAN built. Are owned by each municipality.
Individually. All those 83 municipalities own their own lines.
Yes, and they were all built over centuries, literally, where we go back and we find the permits for these things, and the oldest one we found is 1898.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and it's beautifully written cursive. It's way ahead of its time. But
some Catholic school teacher is really proud.
Yes, right? Yeah. So each municipality owns their own sewers, and they're responsible for it just as we are for our system, which means they have to perform the operation and maintenance. They have to have staff to do that. They respond to any kind of sewer needs. They have to finance that system, and it's one of the many, many things that the local government officials have to worry about.
It's a burden.
It is a burden. But it's all we do. ALCOSAN, that's all we do is sewers. So it makes a lot of sense for these
you
particularly.
You just started the new ad campaign. That's what we do.
That's what we do. Yeah. No, we'll leave that to the experts. But it's important that we can move those larger diameter trunk sewers, is what we call them, where it has more than one municipality connected to it, because they're limited to how they can operate the sewers by their arbitrary municipal boundary.
It stops at their boundary.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the downstream municipalities can't control necessarily the flow that's coming through their line. And the upstream municipalities, where sometimes there's growth happening, they can't control what happens below them that their flow is going into. Where if you move all of this into one authority and it's our responsibility, it removes some of those headaches, and it eliminates those arbitrary problems that aren't really related to performance.
Whereas if you have like a backup down on the bottom of the system or an expansive development with a bunch of surface runoff on the top of the system,
right,
you can balance that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now we're up to transfer. What does that start to mean for ALCOSAN?
Well, we have a little over 22 miles already transferred. In total, there's 265 miles of sewer that are eligible. So we've made a lot of progress with municipalities to get to the 22. We have about another 80 plus in the queue, which is just finishing up the administrative process to get us across the finish line. And what that looks like is we have permits that are applied. Those ones from 1898 and younger are transferred to ALCOSAN. And then we sign the transfer agreement, which basically says, ALCOSAN, these are your sewers now. You own them. You operate them.
Owner of...
Yes. We are the proud owner of 22 and growing. Yes.
That's now, as part of that, has there been like a rhyme or reason for the first 22? Like, what's been your process? This is like a local government nerd in me asking this question.
The first transfer, this is tricky for the municipalities. It was. So at the beginning, I mean, we've talked about kind of how ALCOSAN was created and then this clean water plan now. It really is ALCOSAN 2.0. We're going through agreements again. We're building a plant that's double the capacity.
Z agreements?
Z agreements, right? So those initial ones that everyone signed on. And then as municipalities, there was that initial group and then others came on. They all got a Z agreement too. But for the municipalities, it's nobody really wanted to go first. I think there was some hesitancy. So we found a group where the line was co-owned. And there was an old agreement from the 1960s where we were already performing the operation and maintenance on that line. So it was a good fit. Nobody had to be the first one to kind of stretch their neck out there to see that it's a real program.
The meerkat, like...
Yes, go and poke at those. Is everything safe? Okay. So we transferred that one first.
Okay.
And then now we're just demonstrating to the municipalities we mean what we say.
Is it an issue of trust or change or both or neither?
I think it's part of it is change. I don't think it's trust. I really don't. Everyone has been very, very collaborative.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation. It's, well, talk to me more.
We've never done this before.
We've never done this before. And I think that, as strange as it may be, sewers are part of their identity. There's, I'll throw Mary Ellen Ramage out here. She's fantastic.
Local government hero.
Yes, local government hero in Etna. She knows more about those sewers than anyone ever will.
Yep.
I mean, it's amazing. So it's also kind of a part of their identity, and they want to make sure that ALCOSAN will take care of them.
And because, like that's a good example. Like, she's at the front line for her residents, and she's responsible and respective of them. And now she would help them if there was an issue. Now she's passing that on to ALCOSAN, right?
Correct.
So that's part of the.
So right, you pass on to us. Now you would call us, and we have great operation and maintenance.
Call
staff
Julia.
and
Spicher, SPICHER.
No way. We'll send him straight to our O&M people. But yeah, so I think that's just part of it. And luckily, it was well negotiated with the municipalities, the terms of that transfer agreement before we got to this point. So they're all very comfortable with what's in there, and they had a voice. They were part of that initial conversation.
It's been inclusive.
Very inclusive. And they're our customers. I mean, customer service is one of our guiding values at ALCOSAN. So we want to make sure that we're adhering to that while we're taking care of these
That's
sewers
awesome.
too.
That's awesome. Tim, on to you about the GROW program, which is
Mhm.
kind of the other end, right? In terms of if you have the regional conveyance, now you're at the surface level. Talk to us about GROW and what the GROW program is, maybe first of all.
Well, GROW program is a grant program. It's a financial incentive program to provide funding to the municipalities to get water out of the sewers. It's every municipality is eligible to apply for a grant. Sewer authorities in ALCOSAN service area, they're also eligible to apply. And the program at its face is fairly simple. Show us a project that is going to be effective. We're in our 9th cycle now.
Wow.
And it has evolved. Our first cycle was, hey, show us a project. Now it's like, okay, let's talk about this project and going through the details. Like, is this the best project for the municipality? And ALCOSAN puts a lot of resources into this collaboration. So GROW has been pretty successful. We've awarded 160 projects, active projects. They almost nearly all of our municipalities have participated. There's a few that haven't participated, but the vast majority have. $63 million in ALCOSAN investment has pretty much been matched by municipal investment. So ALCOSAN, working with the municipalities to get the water out. But one of the key differences when we were going through and trying to figure out how to put something like this together, there's other grant programs around the country, but one of the things that most were lacking was proof. Show us how this works.
Like validation.
Exactly.
Improvement. Okay.
And so the program is data driven. We need to, when you apply for a project, for grant funding, you need to be able to show us what's going on. Where's your problem? You need to have a problem. What's your solution? And we've been working with the municipalities, and sometimes we actually are able to look at the project and then find other parts that, well, what about here? You got a problem here, and it doesn't seem like it would be a big investment to fix that part. Why is that not part of your project? Include it as part of your project because the grant amount is based off of how we see the project being cost effective.
Talk to me a little bit about, like, if you could give an example of what a project is and why municipalities are coming to you with these projects.
Sure. We have 5 types. We have green stormwater infrastructure as one. We have direct stream inflow removal, I&I removal, inflow infiltration removal, sewer separation, and then system optimization. So a green infrastructure project typically is in a combined sewer community, and they will build something that is going to capture the storm runoff that normally would go into a catch basin and immediately get into a combined sewer and immediately get to ALCOSAN and possibly cause
typical.
Right.
Yeah.
And the green infrastructure will do its best to hold the water, mimic nature. Sometimes it allows it to infiltrate into the ground and not get put back into the system. Sometimes it holds it, but because of buildings or anything, it can't infiltrate, so it just slowly goes back in. Sewer separation is another project that combined communities can do where instead of having one pipe, we're going to build a second pipe that's going to take either all the storm or it's going to be a new sanitary sewer. And basically you're splitting that up and reducing the amount of water going to a CSO. If you can do a full separation, you're getting rid of a CSO. Sometimes you don't have the ability to do that, but you can definitely reduce the overflows. I&I, breaking infiltration in pipes, fixing that. Stream inflows, as Julia pointed out before, streams were culverted and we were treating streams.
Right.
get that out.
Get it out of the system.
Yeah, nobody's paying for that. And then system optimization, they're typically small fixes to your system that directly reduce overflows.
Yeah.
And so we've reduced overflow. We've estimated over 200 million gallons of overflow reduction, and close to 1 billion gallons of water has been taken out of the system.
That's amazing. So, I mean, on just to go back to the big picture, right? Fix the plant, create these big tunnels, regionalize the system, but ultimately at the source, kind of, you're reducing the problem at the surface level or within the municipality, which lessens the stress on the system as you go down to kind of those other components.
It'll
of the plant.
allow all the other pillars to be run more effectively, more efficiently.
That's so it's awesome to. I've been away for this for a little while, so it's cool to see this coming together, and taking shape like this. One of the things, it'd be interesting, Tim, to hear your opinion on this, like how this has evolved. Like you're in your 9th cycle. I remember personally, like some of the first cycles, like everybody's like excited and like, oh, what's this program? How have you seen that evolve? From like the early grow projects to like what you're seeing now.
The early grow projects, we had a lot of conceptual ideas, and we were encouraged to do that. Our green committee wanted the program to go out, and we wanted it to go out. Over time, every cycle we learned something, and then we make a change to the program, a positive change that helps the program become more efficient, more cost effective. So those early projects, we had a lot of green infrastructure projects in those early ones. As time went on, people were starting to, when we started getting the data back, combined communities were starting to see, well, sewer separation is more cost effective. We get more bang for the buck off of that. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, sewer separation, that's good. But if you have what I call a hyper effective project, why don't you toss some green in there? Yeah. Because you still have a water quality aspect
which green infrastructure allows you to do filtration, right?
Exactly. I&I projects typically, they start out slow, but we have more sanitary sewer communities than combined sewer communities. And everybody's eligible for GROW, but a sanitary sewer community typically can't do sewer separation or generally green infrastructure.
Right.
So they're pretty much limited to I&I. But that's good, because what that's doing is that's helping them fund projects to reduce the infiltration coming into the line. These liners extend the useful life of the pipe. So, they're not going out and digging up the road and putting in a new line. They're just going to line the sewer and extend that life, because the liners end up becoming very, hard, and structurally it works.
Have you seen this kind of to both of you, but maybe start with Tim, the municipalities as well as industry start to adapt as you've created these programs? 10, 15 years ago, like green infrastructure was maybe an esoteric topic in some circles. There were concerns about having like the workforce or the technical talent to do it. Or even to develop a project, like some of the stuff that you're saying at the municipal level. Has that evolved, and are you starting to see kind of more innovation or creativity in the sense of both industry and the municipalities?
I think that regarding green, I think a lot of people are starting to see it's not the solution everywhere, but it's still a solution.
It's a tool.
You have to, it's one of the tools in the toolkit, and you have to be able to find the right place for it. If you have a developer coming in and they're basically starting with a clean slate, well, yeah, of course, put in green. And if the municipalities might have some kind of incentive or some way for that to happen, by all means. And you see more green out there.
And Tim, I think it was around cycle 5 or 6 where you came up with controlling the source. which was a way to help municipalities identify where they're going to be the most effective. So it considered all the
by
different
municipality, like
by municipality,
yeah.
by site, and it factored in things like we don't want to infiltrate here in Pittsburgh, where you could contribute to hill instability, trigger landslides. You have to be thoughtful and judicious about it. So keeping kind of that data-driven approach that works so well on Grow, it said, hey, we'll do some of the initial legwork for you.
Yeah.
And here's where you can be really, really impactful with your source controls.
And Controlling the Source was a report that it's still on ALCOSAN's website. It's open. Anybody can take a look at it. There's a lot of tools that are underneath it. So all the municipalities have access to that information. And yeah, we identified over 50 strong green infrastructure projects, and we gave these conceptual designs to all the municipalities.
I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here. You made me do it. I mean, that is fascinating because, I think back to some of the, when I was serving as the sustainability director at the city, it was 2018, 2019, we had huge amounts of precipitation, which kind of led to landslides. And how has, I'm going to do two paths here. One is like, how has data and kind of that knowledge and insights that you're getting from these projects, as well as changing weather patterns and kind of that you used very early on in the conversation, the term adaptive management. How has this knowledge started to guide some of your decision-making processes and that back and forth with local governments to kind of get them to the right place and vice versa? Over
the years, you start to get that picture of where things are going to be the most effective. I could probably tell you, I could look at a map and I could point out, if you built green in this area, it'll work great. If you build green in this area, it's not going to work well.
Yep.
And by being able to share that information with the municipalities and just help them along, sometimes folks just need a little encouragement.
Sure.
And that's what we try to do. We give them as much help as we possibly can. In the end, it's still your municipal project. You still have to approve, finding the funds and everything. But in the meantime, we like to work with you and try to figure out, what I always try to say, is this a Grow project?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the municipalities, they have their own set of orders, right? Since they still own part of the system, the majority of the system and sewers in our region, they have their own orders. So Tim is very good at that as well, of when right now they were issued last year. I think all of the orders were signed, and Three Rivers Wet Weather has been a huge advocate for the municipalities and a huge help to ALCOSAN through the process. But as they're issued those orders where they have to make improvements to their system, a lot of times Grow in Controlling the Source is a go-to guide for them of like, okay, how can I meet compliance at the same time? Where will I see the biggest reduction in overflow based off of what ALCOSAN's models and datas and hydraulic conditions that use those typical year rainfalls that are the backbone of the plan we've put together. So it's all based on the same set of data. So their compliance, our compliance, their Grow funding, their Grow projects, it's all coming down to that same kind of core group of data.
Interesting. Well, one other tangent off of that I was thinking about too is how has, if at all, the role of the infrastructure money, the federal infrastructure dollars through the IIJA and the Inflation Reduction Act and all these tools that the feds have come out, have they also been a part of that conversation or not yet? Like, has it, you even had ARA money and Recovery Act money and things like that, or has that been separate and distinct?
I think that on the municipalities and in terms for Grow, if they're able to access those funds, they've been trying to access those funds. The Grow program doesn't take any of that money. Everything in Grow is ratepayer funded.
Yep.
So, but these days, hey, we got this grant.
And we can stack stuff.
Right. Yeah. And we look at all those third-party grants as, well, that's your money.
Yep.
Just let's keep a good accounting of everything because, you can't make money off of these programs. But the best part is when a municipality barely pays anything, but they have a very good project.
Yeah.
I love those.
Yeah, that's the best.
And we've seen that money not necessarily come directly through to ALCOSAN, but to the municipalities.
Right.
So the DCED funding,
Sure.
the PA-H2O grants were amazing. So a lot of the municipalities either got grant funding for a GROW project, a source reduction project, or for some of the regionalization defect repairs that they had to make
Sure.
for those sewers that are in real bad shape. So that's been encouraging.
Nice.
And the best part is when GROW helps with a municipality with their defect repairs, because when you line those two up, sometimes it just works.
Yeah,
You can, get two birds with one stone.
exactly.
Effectively. A couple last questions. I just want to bring some stuff together. And we started this out in the green room talking about this, but I was super interested in both your backgrounds and your roles with groups like ASCE, the Society of Civil Engineers, and EWRI, the Environmental Water Resource Institute. Tim and Julia, your roles with groups like Envision and LEAD. The big question I'm interested in here is really like the role of those professional organizations and how you found how they're helping to advance these types of projects and activities in this space in terms of engineering and construction. And I've been fascinated by this. Like I mentioned, the flood diversion program we have in Fargo, and it's an Envision certified project. So we're going through this right now in terms of cataloging everything in the project and understanding the impact that construction and engineering and design have on the program. And then we just did an event with ASCE over at the Science Center the other day. So this is like bringing my worlds together. Where do you see the industry going in terms of water and wastewater treatment? And some of these, both standards like Envision, but also the role of professional associations and how they're just helping us get better. And what's that? Where do you see that going?
Folks like ASCE, they're trying to bring the knowledge from around the country. The Pittsburgh section brings it back into Pittsburgh. Institutes like EWRI, they have that big focus on water resources. People like Tom Petroni, Cesar Simon, really trying their best to lead the way. And
quick shout out to Tom Petroni's Twitter account. It's really good. But go ahead. Sorry.
But just bringing in the knowledge from around the country. What kind of advancements? I'm not 100% sure, but I'm always surprised when new things pop up, Grant. For me, I'm an old school engineer. I want to solve the problems, and if somebody identifies new innovative ways, I'm always open to new ideas. I love ideas. I'm unfortunately not always the idea guy. I could see a good idea, and Lord knows, at ALCOSAN, there's a lot of good ideas going around. Julia had a lot of good ideas when we worked together on GROW. She said, Tim's controlling the source. That was her controlling the source. We have a lot of people that have the good ideas. The thing is, you have to know when an idea is good. Don't be dismissive. Be open to ideas. ASCE is always trying to bring that from around the country back in. That's why that chapter is successful. EWRI is a very good institute, focusing in on the water resources of our region.
Excellent.
Well, this is, there's no better time to be an engineer in this region. This is an opportunity that very few people are ever going to get to experience. And I think one of the important roles that those institutions and those certification programs play is young engineers.
Yes.
Encouraging young engineers into the field. We have a scholastic outreach department. They're wonderful about getting us some interns that come in for the summer. I had one a couple years ago, Aditi Patel. She was amazing from CMU, and she ended up staying on a little bit longer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so she came for the summer, and then we kept her as long as we could. But it gets them exposure. So it kind of re-energizes us it shows us
Yeah.
where the industry is headed and where it's trained or going. And then I think the other big part of it is we're going to need a lot of people to implement this, to get this built and constructed and then maintained afterwards.
That's something the academic community really needs to. Seems like they need to focus on. With ASC, I'm on the membership committee, and what we see is, folks graduate and they disappear.
Yeah,
and there has to be
keep 'em here.
more. There has to be more of a link between not just the students and the society. There has to be a link between the students, the opportunities that are out there,
Yes.
and the work that is going to be out there.
that is so paramount. I mean, just reflecting because two of the fellows I was with in Fargo here, one was from West Fargo, the other was from Moorhead. Same issues. There's 6 municipalities, 2 counties, 2 states.
Yeah.
So the same types of regional coordination that was required to germinate and now deliver this project. And the thing that they said to me that I was like, it made me think about this conversation was, how could they miss this project? They grew up there as civil engineers, like they had to be a part of it.
Right.
And what it means to them in terms of being a part of that program, because what it means to their community, protecting their family, their friends from flooding and improving the water quality, enhancing the environment, like all these sorts of things. I mean, and you guys are right at the epicenter of that. Like, how awesome is that?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean,
it is.
To go from punk jazz band in Philadelphia to Philadelphia Water Department back to Pittsburgh. But I think your point is a really good one about the future. Like, this is a generational opportunity for Pittsburgh builders and constructors and engineers to improve the region.
Absolutely.
And it's all local.
And it's all
you
local.
You can't build this someplace else and then install it here. You
can't export it.
It's jobs here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, let's leave it there because there's a lot of smiles and I don't think we can get better than that. I want to just thank you guys for being a part of just an amazing conversation, an amazing project and what you're doing for the Pittsburgh region at ALCOSAN. So thank you.
Thank you for having us. It's great.
Julia, Tim, and the whole team at ALCOSAN, thanks for being guests here on the Green Voice podcast. I want to thank Wayne and Tanner and Anthony and the team at Pittsburgh Earth Day and the team here at the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University. I'm Grant Ervin with S&B USA. Thanks for listening in, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.